Welcome to Steelfest 2024. I'm once again your host, Jerry, and this is Rauta. And now we have a very, very special guest from Norway. Let's introduce the man in the hour. Sir, why on earth are you here with me, and what's your role in Finland?
Yeah, this is my third time in Finland this year, so people have started suspecting I live here now.
Yeah.
So yeah, but my name is Yusuf Parvez, also Vicotnik, Mr. Fix-It, the Viper, had many names through the years. I'm here to do a couple of shows. I just finished the Ved Buens Ende show, and I'm doing the Dødheimsgard show tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I'm here. It's also my second time playing Steelfest. I think we were here in 2018 last time.
Yeah, so you're pretty much a frequent visitor, and you probably already know a few Finnish words too.
Noni, rantatalatsini väläs.
All right.
Kipis.
Kipis, that's a pretty important word.
Yes, kipis.
Kipis. So let's start talking with Dødheimsgard. Obviously, there are so many projects and bands you've been working on throughout the years or decades.
Yeah.
But I guess Dødheimsgard is the one that you're mostly known for. And once again, you had a new album out already last year.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of good feedback and all that stuff. What I've noticed throughout your career is that Dødheimsgard is one piece in place, always constantly changing throughout the years, album by album. And how do you feel now that there's already about almost a year when the album got out, and this roller coaster ride has led you playing those songs also live?
Yeah, no, it's been a very good experience because, sitting down, making Black Medium Current and having such a raw honesty to the lyrics and the delivery, and stripping down kind of all the melodies to kind of the core elements of I always thought about a woman in a forest. She lost her child. She was in the forest 1,000 years ago, and she's humming to herself to comfort herself. And I'm thinking, what would that melody be? That transcendental melody that we have sang for ages to ourselves to comfort ourselves. And that's what I basically tried to find when I made Black Medium Current. And then seeing that people really connected with it, and not only connected with it like as in I like it or I don't like it, but connected with it on a deeper level as well, as they could reiterate a lot of the stuff that I really put into the record. People could really tell me that was their emotion listening to it. So, and I guess that's the measure of success for me, is that you manage to convey what you're trying to, So, like we talked 5 minutes ago, there's there's a real big opportunity to make art in black metal. There's not a big opportunity to make money. And luckily then, since you know that, you go into this willingly, you can rid yourself of that distraction, So you can go focus 100% into the artistic expression you want to express.
Dødheimsgard is a very, very peculiar band and stands out from a lot of other Norwegian bands for many reasons. And one of them is that you never really kept going one and the same pattern. I mean, what happened with the early albums, they're kind of a black metal, early grunge, black trash. Then suddenly you went for full industrial, very experimental, some would even say avant-garde-ish, but not in the Ved Buens Ende kind of a way.
Yeah.
And how do you feel in hindsight, taking a look at the whole career with all these different phases or eras of the band?
I think, if you consider when Dødheimsgard released our first album, I was already playing in Ved Buens Ende. I had already been playing black metal since '91.
Yeah.
I started my first black death metal kind of band. So by '95, I played black metal for several years already. Yeah. Like 4 years isn't much by today's standards, but it was a lot of years back then.
In the days. Yeah.
So having Ved Buens Ende and getting a record deal with that, I felt like, okay, I never made my black metal record. And I should make my black metal record, because I've been playing black metal for so many years now. I didn't get a record deal in '91, not in '92, not in '93, and by that time I progressed into avant-garde already. Yeah. So that's why we put Dødheimsgard together, to make our homage to where we come from, basically. Yeah. Pay our dues to the genre that put us on to music in the first place, you know. And it's pretty much the same thing with the second record, that now we're paying our dues further back, and really making a record that pays homage to all thrash metal records, basically everything from Metallica to German thrash metal, basically.
Now, talking about Metallica and things like that, it's somehow fascinating to hear, because we're roughly from the same era, same age, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of nowadays kids don't even seem to understand what it is when you're like born in the 70s and you're finding all those early 80s albums, and your like mind is like old bone. And the kids of nowadays like, we don't really listen to those mainstream metal bands, and they're just like straight coming to what happened in the 90s or even early 2000s, and they're kind of like missing the important parts of evolution.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's already creating a very, very different setting in terms of music. How important you see this, say, background, the history with all the old bands in order to create your music? Yeah,
it's obviously very important. I think even if you don't can nail it down, like in a lingual perspective, how and why, and it just is who you are, right? Because you grew up on this record, eventually you started making music yourself. So you will be a fool to think that those old records never played a part in what you are delivering. So, I think that the thing that maybe sets Dødheimsgard apart is that I also opened the doors to all the other types of music I grew up with. You know, having an Indian background, I grew up with a lot of Indian music. You know, and I had a lot of friends that were into rap music. I've always been a big sucker for rock and old pop music, synth, and stuff like that. And I kind of let those doors be open, and didn't think that black metal only should have metal influences. You can basically draw any influence you want into your artistic expression. It's all about your limitations, basically, you know.
Now, this is obviously quite easy to hear nowadays, especially if people are like older, more experienced with their instruments, more skilled, and maybe even more open-minded. I mean, if I go to listen to, say, some later Enslaved, okay, there's some Big Floyd or King Crimson or that stuff, but this wasn't obviously the case when we were kids in the 90s, and we were teenagers and figuring out the kind of rules of the scene, what can you include and all that stuff. But
I will tell you an interesting story. I don't know if I told it before, maybe in an interview, but I'll tell it again anyway. Like, when we released 66 International, we got so much flack for it.
Yeah.
And we went on tour in '99, and everybody of our fans for the two first records, they were waiting us outside to beat us up because they hated our new album. Yeah. So it was a funny perspective, right? We are standing outside every venue, every day, having fist fights with our fans. Wow. So the people we have fist fights with, they have Dødheimsgard patches on their backs. They have Dødheimsgard hand-drawn covers, you know. We were their favorite band, and we disappointed them so much in releasing 66. But I think disappointment is very important in your life. You know, if you go through it just being content, there's no reason to grow, right?
There's no reason to evolve and improve.
You'll just stagnate. But to finish my story, then I was on tour in 2015. And I was sitting at the bar after a show, and this German guy, he tapped me on the shoulder. Hey, Yusuf, do you remember me? And I said, no, I don't. I was one of the fans you fought with outside when you released 66 International. Oh, yeah, how are you doing, sir? I'm doing fine. I just want to tell you, now I get it. Yeah. That was his message to me.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Now, to be frankly, totally honest, I remember being not angry, but I was disappointed after you stayed in the garden and all that. How come they went all like fucking weird industrial and experimental, and I was like, but I love the second album so much, I love the early stuff, and now this is all weird, but well, yeah.
But you know, in a sense, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to kind of challenge everybody because we wanted this genre to grow artistically. Even today, this genre is suffering a bit, right? Because the aesthetics of the genre is very similar. And it's kind of contradictory in a way, because you have all these individuals talking about individuality and going their own path and blah blah blah, and then all the bands look and sound exactly the same. And I think that's a bit of a mismatch, you know. Well, it doesn't correlate, you know.
There is exactly that happening. A lot of like, always go for whatever is your own path, and when you do, why did you do that? So it's like a fucking weird world.
Yeah.
Now, also what is notable in your career is that you have had quite a few vocalists, and all quite different styles, even if very, very skilled.
Yeah.
How has this, I don't know, affected your thinking in order to create songs, songwriting, and etc. when you are operating with different talents here?
Yeah, you know, like with Aldran, that has this unique way of encompassing the music. He has a really, really great emotional understanding for music. So he has no like formal training in music, and he doesn't have the right timings and stuff like that, but that's what makes him interesting as a vocalist, I think. What he does have is that he can listen to a part and he can really latch on to the emotion of that part and then convey it vocally. You know, what this part is supposed to say emotionally, he's very good at that. Matt has also that ability, but maybe not to that degree, but Kvost also has the technical ability, and
he's a very good vocalist.
Good vocalist, great range. He understands music structure and theory to the extent that he can also incorporate that. So I made a bit of more, I guess, a bit of more straightforward record for Matt, to kind of highlight his qualities of making verses and choruses and stuff like that. And for Aldran, I kind of just make a bloody mess, basically. You know, make more like theater, basically, musical theater.
But also your later albums, they have kind of like gone up and down in weird places. It's not like you're nowadays doing any kind of a Supervillain thing or 666 International. No. You're also in a different place nowadays, musically. How different it is for you to create these kind of songs versus what happened, say, 20 years ago, not to mention 30 years ago?
I think 20, 30 years ago, you were kind of part of a genre, and you believed in that wholeheartedly, and you didn't really venture that much outside it when it came to certain topics to choose to sing, or words to use in a lyric and stuff like. I think that's the biggest difference 20, 30 years later, that you don't really care, you know? Yeah. You can do whatever you want, basically, and you can form it. So that means you have a bigger palette or more tools to work with. And I think that's the biggest difference. And I want to make it clear, I never abandoned black metal. If you listen to all my record, you know, like, there's always a tangent there that's gone all the way back to the past. So it's not like a Ulver thing. That kind of changed.
Well, that went really, really far away from it.
It just started playing another genre, you know.
Yeah.
So that has never been my goal. My goal has been to stay within the genre, but to try to open it up.
Like to kick down the doors a little bit.
And make it larger, basically, and make it more not so stuck in its own way, because I think like the tropes we made up in the early 90s, that, you know, like no band should sound like the other band, and I think they made a really good job in the early 90s, that in the sense that Immortal didn't sound like Bursum didn't sound like Mayhem didn't sound like Emperor, and I kind of wanted to continue that mindset.
Well, that's where you actually succeeded very, very well.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's one of the beauty when people look for especially Bergen scene, but also other places, is that a lot of Norwegian bands which were there to define the whole second wave of black metal all sounded different. There was like a unique nature, like Dødheimsgard surely ain't some Enslaved or Emperor or Dark Throne or whatever, but it's starting with like even Aldran's ways of distincting vocals.
Exactly.
Like, this ain't no Fenris, this ain't no weakness, and so there was also always that. But did you ever have some kind of a, maybe not real, but competition in the question marks, like how to like challenge your colleagues in a way?
Yeah, there was huge competition in the 90s. We all, you know, like to the basic level of making the best riff. Yeah. You know, and I think that's one of the reasons why there are so many really good riff makers in Norway. You know, like the Rune Eriksen, Mayhem, kind of myself, Carl Michael from Ved Buens Ende, that has a really special feel with the guitar and makes riff that basically nobody else makes, you know. Because, and that's due to that competition, that we will always challenge ourselves in how to play the guitar and what notes to put together and under which framing or beats or and stuff like that. Yeah. So and we sometimes we kept the riff secret for each other. You know, like I'm not playing Rune this riff because he will steal it because it's so good. Wait till he hears the record, he will be blown away. So I think that that's a very healthy environment for creativity, but it can also be hot-tempered.
It can kind of go into toxic places.
Yeah,
in a way.
it is. It was. So that the toxicity was a part of it, you know. But I think it was worth it in the end, because that's kind of the utility we left behind, right? The utility of the 90s we left behind for others to pick up and take further. And I think there's still good bands out there, you know, like that really does a good job, you know. Whether I like them or not, that's not so important, but they have the mindset, they understand what we did, and they want to do the same, different,
kind of a
same.
challenge.
Yeah.
Now, talking about Ved Buens Ende, how come it never continued with like more albums and all that stuff? I mean, that's very, very cult classic what you had there. And I bet a lot of people have been waiting, like, to the album, the band come back and create a successor, because you still play live, but there is not too much material with Ved Buens Ende. What's the story with that?
It's the difficult second record. I think Written in Waters was such a unique record that making a second album was really hard. You know, figuring out how to kind of pay it justice. Pay the first record justice, because there was nothing like it. Let's face it, there was nothing like it.
Totally, it was like unique, one of a kind of a weird kid in the room.
So maybe that was what this was supposed to be. I don't know yet, because the story isn't finished yet, right?
Exactly.
But maybe that will be the destiny of this record, to be the only weird kid in the classroom, you know? To never have his brother or his cousin or anything like that. We just have to wait and see and find out. Obviously, we have always been making material here and there, you know, and tried it out. But I think it's also really important to keep homage to Written in Waters, to not end up making something 30 years later that doesn't have any...
Kind of a diluted version.
Yeah. Or maybe even no resemblance at all. Maybe where we are now. So that's the challenge, going back, you know, and figuring out, okay, who was I back then? Why did I end up doing this stuff, you know? And the funny thing about writing Written in Waters to begin with, it was so effortless. And maybe that's what we need to find again. Stop thinking, you know, and just do it. Make it effortless again, because that was the key the first time. Like you, Skoll, he came in 1 week before we recorded the demo. So up until 1 week before we recorded Those Who Caress the Pale, we had no bass player. And he spent 1 week making those awesome bass lines that you hear on Those Who Caress the Pale promo tape, you know? And that's what I mean with effortless. He just came in. I remember I could play him the riff over and over again. He could roll his cigarette, take a few puffs, and I was thinking, what's wrong with this guy? Why isn't he playing bass? Why is he sitting there smoking his damn cigarette? And you know, he put out his cigarette and he put his bass on there, and whoop, there was a bass line, you know? That's how effortless it was.
Now you also all have, well, these other bands or sometimes projects which are of course consuming time and of course in a way taking their toll on creative energy. Dødheimsgard for you, or Noir for Carmichael and all that stuff. And well, I don't know how much Arto's and the like will affect the whole palette, but have you ever like considered, like, if you put those on a pause, like for a little bit waiting, that could you then kind of find the time and energy and the creativity for Ved Buens Ende? Is it more like a victim of the bigger bands in that sense?
Yeah, it didn't have to be. It could have been all of our main priorities as well, you know. But I think the other bands were easier, you know, to figure out where to go. And I think so it just morphed there organically to, whereas we used more time in the other. Like think for Carl, you know, or Noir is a very it's a very usable band to play in this genre. It works everywhere.
Yeah, it's like a made for live performances.
Exactly. So of course he would want to choose that, you know, because that gives him the trips and gives him the experiences and all that stuff, you know. So and then it's the other kind of practical note. If I put my bands on break to focus on Ved Buens Ende, how do I correlate that with the other guys? Can they put the bands on break as well? Can I picture Skull going to the Arcturus guys saying, sorry guys, I'm not doing any shows,
well, exactly.
You know? Of course he won't, you know? Because the other bands, there we have all these other people dependent on us doing our job, basically. Yeah?
So can we even say that the industry, with their expectations, money and gigs and tours and bookers and all that stuff, they are the real challenge here?
I think it's part of it, because I think it's easier to garner success both creatively and practically with the other bands we played, basically. So it's nothing we have sat down and thought about. It's not like I sat down in my kitchen one day and I thought, yeah, Dødheimsgard is actually easier to play live with. I didn't make a conscious decision. I think it just ended up that way, you know?
You are kind of a hardwired and you're just out of control.
Yeah.
Can we even challenge the concept that there is no free will when it comes to artistry?
I don't believe in free will.
Me neither.
I believe in will, but I think it's a retrofitting, you know?
Yeah, it's more like you have the skeleton and you're supposed to play with the rules and there it goes.
Yes.
Now, talking about creating music, playing music live, which one is more to your liking? Like, let's put it this way, pointing at the temple of your head, live or creating music, making new albums?
Always been making music. You know, this is where I come from, making music. Because when I started making music in black metal, there were no black metal bands at festivals.
Yep.
There were no record deals.
Definitely not.
You know, Mayhem had released Death Crush. Maybe a few bands were signed on the verge of releasing. Darkthrone was still death metal at that point, you know. So there was nothing like that. So the only love we had was actually making music. And we did it without any sort of support. It wasn't like youth clubs or anything accepted black metal bands, you know. We didn't get any encouragement at home. We didn't get any money to buy instruments because our parents were horrified that this was what we were doing, you know, this kind of musical genre. So it's kind of, it grew out of will, not free will, but the will to create, basically. And that's still the strongest feeling for me. So at one point, I will probably stop playing live. Not yet, but at some point. But I will never stop making music. And I think that basically says it all, you know? Like.
Well, yeah. What about lyrics? Mandatory evil or the best part of the process?
You know, for me, it's. I think in music will 99% of the time be more important than the lyric. Maybe you have an artist like Leonard Cohen, where you can challenge that idea. Maybe the lyric is even more important than the music. But in 99% of the time, music is music. But what the lyric does, it elevates the music. It takes the music to a further high. If you make the lyric and the music correlate and there's a good topic, you know, or what I try to do in my lyrics is find the courage to be honest, you know, because I think there's a lot of lies in lyrics. There's
lots of pretentious stuff.
Yeah, a lot of pretentious stuff. Always a presentation of yourself like a master or a warrior, or especially in our genre, there's a lot of self-deludement, you know.
Definitely.
So I flipped that idea on Black Medium Current, and instead I wrote about my vulnerabilities, you know, and my kind of sinister emotions and thoughts towards myself, basically, instead. So it's not a please cry with me kind of a record, but it's honest about the vulnerabilities, and in a sense it's a strength, right, to encourage them, to encourage the vulnerabilities and take them into accepting that they are part of who you are, you know, like, and be more open about kind of your background and things you really believe in outside the mythological sense, you know, like we talked about free will, like philosophy, add that as a tangent instead of devils and demons and satans and stuff like that, which was always a language for something else, I think, you know. But
kind
it's
of a metaphors.
Yeah, it's a deluded language because you haven't learned to be honest yet, right?
Well, I think it's a part of the being youth, and you're kind of want to use the simplified words, and also write something down that people would expect you to be, like fit in the group. Like if I write about darkness and evil, and people would like, yeah, that's so Bathory-like, But if you would like write like, I'm weak and I'm old, fragile person, I'm gonna fucking die and I'm suffering, and people would be, how is this relevant to your music? What are you doing?
Yeah. I think, you know, like if we look at the old kind of black metal lyrics, we would have to say there's a lot of dishonesty in them. But there's an interesting contingent to them, and that's what lies beneath them. Why did you choose these words? Why did you choose this aesthetic? And why did you choose this phrasing and mythology as kind of the curtain drop or the backdrop, you know? Because the truth lies behind it, right? So you can dig in that. So I think the old kind of lyrics are still very interesting because there's some truth to the lies, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, of course. They're like always a little bit truth, no matter what you do, and always maybe a little bit dishonesty too.
Exactly. So that's what you can do. You can dig into, okay, why did I do this? Why did I choose specifically this kind of aesthetic? And then you can try to unpack it, you know, and see what you find. Yeah?
Talking of which, why of all the given styles, why go with black metal? Before you answer, I mean, people could go on like, okay, but I want to play metal, I don't want to do pop, or I'm not too into doing, say, jazz or whatever. But why of all the metal styles, the least commercial, at least back in the days, I know it's a little bit different, but you could go on for, I don't know, power metal or heavy metal or progressive metal or death metal, thrash metal, what have you. And let's go for the evil one, let's go for the dark one, which no parents will ever understand. Rebellion or something deeper?
Yeah, I think if you go back to the early 90s guys, we were all kind of outsiders.
Kind of a geeks too.
I don't know if all of us were geeks, you know, like I had a pretty tough background, you know, like when I was 12 years old, I stayed out all night, you know, and I smoked hash, and started with that kind of exploring from an early age. And like put that into a musical context, I always thought like every other genre sold you a product, you know, whereas black metal, I felt that was real in a sense, you know, like it wasn't even band necessarily good at playing their instruments, you know. Actually,
there was lots of sloppiness.
Yeah, most of us were really bad, but there was still a will to play there, and that's what I felt was honest with it. A third factor contingent is that I was happy enough to live really close to ground zero, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all these people that kind of lived, you know, in Thailand and loved Norwegian black metal.
Yeah.
They kind of had to regard it from afar, but I didn't. I was stuck in ground zero, basically. I think that is probably as rewarding as you playing grunge in Seattle in the early 90s, you know?
Oh yeah, death metal in Florida and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just part of something that's not just happening right now, it's happening right here, you know?
Yeah.
And
the very core of the action.
Yeah. So when I used to look at Maiden album covers, you know, I never saw myself in that position. I always thought that, no, these were larger than life people, basically.
Kind of otherworldly when you look at the Eddie and all that, like, this couldn't be happening in Norway or Finland or all
or
that
to
stuff.
me, you know. But as soon as I discovered black metal, I saw, okay, there's a contingent of me here, you know. There's something I can do here. It's something that speaks to me in another way. It's not from a distance, it's from inside. And that was really, I remember potentially saying back in the day, it was a calling, you know?
Yeah.
But in many ways it was, because you felt the music on the inside.
You were kind of gravitating towards it whether you wanted or not.
Yeah, exactly.
You were kind of bound to do it.
Exactly.
Because at least I remember how it was for us in the early or mid-90s. Like when I was finding about all these albums and I was staring at these album covers in a local record store, I like, this was all the time something I was looking for, but I was looking for it.
Yeah.
And then it was like, suddenly I was with these guys playing in the bands, and sort of like kind of pulling me in without like how to say, no word for it.
And I also feel like back then, and probably now as well, but especially back then, I felt like society was very hypocritical.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think black metal was one of the genres that said, okay, we don't give a fuck, you know. Like,
especially in a place like Norway, which, like, technically speaking, like in all the Nordic countries, very secular, but at the time you have still kind of being gripped by the church, and like especially I remember the shock when the first time I went to Oslo. Like, there's church in every fucking block, basically.
It is.
And I was like, no, I remember saying to my girlfriend back then, like, no wonder these guys wanted to burn everything down, because it's like infested with all these religious monuments, basically. And these guys wanted to get the fuck out with the religion and the system.
And I think on an individual level, people were really, even like you said, Norway is secular, you know, but when it came to an individual level, there was a lot of conservatism on how you should behave, and who you should be, what you should like, and
what you should wear.
Yeah, exactly. And there was really no good reason for it. So then finding a genre that said, we don't give a fuck what you think, you know?
Is the new punk in a way.
Yeah, the new punk, the last punk.
Maybe the last punk. Now in hindsight also, of course you made a lot of friends with similar mindsetting and having the shared interest in the music, in the scene, the genres. In hindsight, how it feels like you've grown up with these guys you made friends with more than 30 years ago. How many of them are still, you know, like close friends? Or are there lots of people like, I used to know that guy, but we went different paths and all?
Yeah, I think we're a really strong group of friends, you know. I think maybe the bigger group in Elm Street and all that, they morphed into many smaller groups, and I think like when it comes to our group, it's like Ved Buens Ende, Dødheimsgard, Strid, Flority, you know, all of us have stayed really close friends, you know.
Yeah.
But then, you know, Ulver, of course, you know, and so, but I think, of course, you haven't been able to maintain that relationship with everybody in the scene, but most people I grew up with, I meet them on the road anyway, you know, like
with tours and
festivals. Exactly. So maybe that's our new relationship now, and it kind of makes sense because our relationship back then was also being in an environment where we made music. So now we're still in an environment where it's about the music. So yeah, I think those relationships probably never grew out of the metal setting or the music making setting, and that's why it's still just operating under those kind of ideals.
Now, a weird question related to Norway. What I've learned through my Norwegian friends and of course people I've been with all the years is that what I never realized back in the days, obviously, too naive and too young for that, but there's certain kind of a Oslo versus Bergen setting when it comes to not only in terms of scene, but also it seems cultural and historically. What's your take on that?
I think like the rivalry is older than the genre, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
so the rivalry is already there. So when black metal comes along, it's kind of just picking up something that's already there, you know?
Yeah, like let's take the flag with us.
Yeah, you know, you already had that kind of rivalry, let's say in football. It's always been in the mindset, the West against the southeastern part of Norway, and it's also the two biggest cities. Tell me any country where the two biggest cities aren't like, oh fuck that city, this city is better. Well, it's just you know,
we have similar things in Finland, obviously.
Exactly.
Now, which one would you choose? Which is your winning team?
Winning football team?
No, in the cities.
It's very hard to decide. I will give that one a draw. I think also as time has moved along, both our cities has changed a lot. Or Bergen has probably to a more degree stayed the same, whereas Oslo has become even more secular and you know, like probably a lot more immigration, a lot more of influx of different cultures and stuff like that.
Kind of international in a way.
Yeah.
The typical capital city thing.
Exactly, and I think also that kind of puts a mark on the music we make, you know? and probably always have made, and why it sounds a bit different than the Bergen scene, because the Bergen scene is a bit more conservative when it comes to how they approach their black metal, I would say.
That's a very good diplomatic answer, because I'm already like the Bergen people like, oh, and Oslo people are like, oh.
No, if you...
and then Trondheim people are like, actually, we have the church, these are the cover of the Mysteries of Satanas.
Yeah, but you know, like as unpopular as the dude is, and he's a clown, to make that clear, you can never disregard Bursum, you know. And it's if it was only Bursum, the only band that ever came from Bergen, I would see that the Bergen's place in the annals of history would be just as strong, you know, because it's such an impact. You know, his style is almost a subgenre on its own.
Yeah, it's creative, totally.
So just having Bursum in there says it all, you know.
Yeah, and lots of other bands. Now, talking a little bit about touring before we go on and out. You've been to a lot of places with your bands and all that stuff. Any favorite places that had really, like, I don't know, made such strong memories that when you go on your deathbed and I'm like, kids, I'm gonna tell them about story about this particular festival or place or country, anything, something like really special that made your life, made your day?
There are a lot of memories like that. Too bad it can't be like that all the time, but sometimes we, you know, travel in on the Friday, we play on the Friday evening, and we go back on the Saturday back home. So obviously you won't have that of a big experience. I can mention a lot of countries and cities like Mexico City. I can also mention Tasmania. Dark Mofo Festival is insane festival. The whole city is, you know, encapsulated in that festival. But there's also thing doesn't really have to be that dramatically different either for it to be huge, you know. And so this is where I wanted to end up, where I'm going now. And that is one of my greatest experiences playing music is actually when I stayed 4 weeks in Savonlinna here in Finland. For one reason or another, I just fell in love with that place. So to that degree that when we were finished making the first Code album, we were done recording with Tuomo, we said our goodbyes, and we were leaving for the airport. Yeah. I told other guys, I'm not leaving, I'm staying here. So I stayed in Savonlinna until I just had a bus fare home to Sweden. That was all I had to Stockholm, because I knew as long as I managed to come to Stockholm, then I will be fine, because I know a lot of people there, you know. No, I didn't have a bus fare to Stockholm, sorry. I had a bus fare to Helsinki, from Savonlinna to Helsinki. Yeah. That was the only money I had left when I left Savonlinna. Wow. So I stayed there as long as I possibly could be. I love the people there, I love just the whole environment, and even the bars. Everybody was really, really good people, basically. So I made my way to Helsinki, my last couple of bucks. I snuck on the ferry from Helsinki to Stockholm, because I knew I needed to come to Stockholm. This would take me the whole way home, because I have my stepmother there, I have my sister there, I have tons of friends in Stockholm. Hello, Risne! And yeah, so I snuck on the ferry and I had to run away from the guards and stuff like that. I managed to stay hidden, and I came over to the other side in Stockholm, and I went to my stepmother's place, and she was in India, so she wasn't even home. So I was, oh fuck, what do I do now? So I went to a friend of mine, and I walked to his door, and there was another surname there, so he's moved. So how the fuck do I find my friend now? Eventually I got to find him, but then by that time it was 24th of December, Christmas.
Fuck.
So
great timing.
Yeah, great timing. So I stayed in his apartment, you know, alone Christmas Eve, because I loved Savonlinna so much.
Oh, that's a very heartwarming story.
Thank you.
Now, before we finish, because obviously we all have to go and all that stuff, what is going to happen in near future with Dødheimsgard? Because Ved Buens Ende we already covered pretty much of that. Yeah. Let's play a little bit foretelling.
Okay.
Let's say a couple of 2, 3, 4 years maybe.
You know, you can make plans.
Yeah.
But it never turns out the way you make them anyway.
Yeah. No? So let's Like a wild guess, rather.
Yeah. So I've started making music again. I think I need to abandon my 8-year cyclus for each album.
Yeah.
Because then I won't have many albums left, you know.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
Running out of time. So I really need to pick up the speed there. So instead of giving myself that 1 year, 2 year hiatus where I just can't stand music, I kind of came out of that mindset quite quickly and I started making new songs. I really think there's a lot more space to uncover with what I touched on with Black Medium Current, because Black Medium Current songs, the scope of them shows that with this formula you can really go in any direction. There's no limitation here, you know. So I think there's still a lot of doors to uncover using the Black Medium Current as the contextual background for where I'm going next. So, and now I'm trying to, you know, like, music is simple in that way that you know what you want when you hear it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you try to make music that fits something, some idea you have in your head. You don't really necessarily know how to get it from your head into your fingers, but you try. And it's when you listen back to the music, then you know if you succeeded or not, you know. So I'm in that phase now where I'm really just searching to put the right colors to the emotions I'm trying to convey.
All right, so there's something for people to, you know,
yeah, and
wait for.
And people will get let's call it a in-between break record as well, because I made another project called Dødsmagir, and I recorded an album with them, which is basically more like Dødheimsgard was in the end 90s. So I'm kind of split my Dødheimsgard into two. I was thinking one day, you know, like movies have spin-offs.
Yes.
Books have spin-offs.
Definitely.
Why can't bands have spin-off? So I made my spin-off band. So Dødheimsgard and Dødsmagir is basically the same band, and but it's branched off, so Dødheimsgard can still venture into the unknown, and Dødsmagir, I can keep my love for kind of where I come from, basically, you know, my historicity. Yeah. And I needed to figure out, okay, how do I make this and make it sound authentic in relation to what I used to make back then. So I found a methodology for it, you know, like not doing a lot of takes, because we were always broke back then. So we couldn't afford to stay in the studio to do take after take. So basically kind of re-simulating kind of the environment of that time in trying to get the formula right.
Wow, that's a very, very interesting way to get back to the nostalgia in a way.
Yeah.
All right. Final words. Any records? Any? Hey, hello there, guys.
Savonlinna, I will be back.
All right, we'll quit with that. Now you have gotten a little bit deep dive into the world of Dødheimsgard and Ved Buens Ende, and hopefully beyond. Now, I hope you enjoyed this funny, entertaining, enlightening session with Yusuf.
Thank you.
So off you go, check out all the Dødheimsgard albums, check out Ved Buens Ende, everything and beyond, and of course the other adventures. Now I want to thank you for your time. This has been a really, really pleasing experience. So off you go, enjoy your travels, and let your ears be filled with great music. This is Steelfest. I am Jerry. This is Yusuf, Dødheimsgard. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
I'm gonna take the microphone, and before we go, let's take a quick photo for your social media, which I will put out on Instagram and stuff when the interview goes out. Now, in terms of time.